In a major boost to Ukraine's defense infrastructure, the US State Department has said that Washington will sell equipment worth $138 million to Kyiv to upgrade its Hawk air defense systems from Moscow's drone and missile attacks. In 2022, the United States began shipping Hawk interceptor missiles to Ukraine as an upgrade to the shoulder-launched Stinger air defense missile systems. The foreign military sale FMS uses $138 million of the $300 million in foreign military financing that the Congress passed as part of the annual defense spending bill recently signed into law. Days after conducting the joint maritime exercises in the South China Sea, United States' National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan has said that more such joint patrols can be expected by the US, Japan, Australia and Philippines in the disputed waters of the South China Sea. United States' statement comes ahead of Washington's key summit with the Japanese and Philippine leaders. On April 7th, naval warships of 4 nations staged maritime drills after China stepped up its aggression against the Philippine vessels. Last month, Philippines-China have had several instances of maritime tensions, including the use of water cannon, escalating rift in the South China Sea. US Senate leader Chuck Schumer met Israeli opposition leader Yair Lapid as tensions between the United States and Israel have grown in past few weeks. The meeting comes after Schumer suggested that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is not operating in Israel's interest and called for Israel to hold fresh elections. Opposition leader Lapid also said that Senate's call for elections makes it clear that Netanyahu is pushing Israel to lose support from Tel Aviv's biggest ally in the West, the United States. The family members and relatives of Hamas-held hostages met US Vice President Kamala Harris and demanded the release of their loved ones from Gaza. On April 9th, the Hamas said that an Israeli proposal on a ceasefire did not meet their demands, but it would study the offer and deliver its response to the mediators. On October 7th last year, Hamas militants entered southern Israel and killed 1,200 people and took 250 people as hostages. Out of the 250 hostages, 120 hostages were released by the Hamas in November after a truce deal mediated by Qatar, and now about 130 are still held captive by the Palestinian militant outfit. In Canada's Quebec, the National Assembly held a standing ovation and a moment of silence to honor Jacob Flickinger, the Canadian aid worker who died in Gaza in an Israeli airstrike. The lawmakers conveyed their condolences to Flickinger's parents who were present in the assembly. Now, Jacob had been volunteering for the NGO World Central Kitchen since March, and he was one of the 7 aid workers who were killed in an Israeli airstrike on Gaza this week. The Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau called the death of the aid worker unacceptable and demanded answers from Israel, which says the airstrike was a mistake. At least 14 Palestinians have been killed during Israeli airstrikes in central Gaza's Nuseirat camp. The Palestinian news agency Wafa reported the airstrikes targeted a residential square in Nuseirat refugee camp, and other airstrikes were reported in Deir al-Bala and Rafah in the south. Notably, the airstrikes took place on the eve of Eid in the Palestinian territory. Israel's war with the Hamas militants has entered the 7th month, and according to the Gaza Health Ministry, over 33,000 people have died so far, and women and children due to Israel's armed offensive in Gaza Strip. Days after the Israeli warplanes bombed the Iranian embassy in the Syrian capital of Damascus, Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Khamenei condemned the Israel's actions and said Israel must be punished, and it shall be for attacking the Iranian embassy compound on April 1st. Well, Israel carried out an airstrike at the Iranian consulate in Damascus that killed 7 military advisors of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Other than Iran, Lebanon too criticized Israel's bombardment on the Syrian soil. At least 5 police officers have been killed and 1 has been injured after Sunni militias attacked 2 police vehicles in Iran's Sistan-Baluchistan province. The Jaish al-Adl group has claimed responsibility of the attack. The latest attack comes days after the militant outfit killed 11 security personnel in the same region. Now, the Sistan-Baluchistan province is the area which borders Afghanistan and Pakistan. It has been the site of frequent clashes between Iranian security forces and Sunni militants, as well as drug traffickers. Students and professors in various Italian cities held protests to boycott the research agreements between Italian and Israeli universities. Several students and professors gathered in Rome in front of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs with banners reading "Cooperation with Israel University is complicity with Gaza genocide." Now, the protests are also being staged against the presence of foundations funded by Italian companies such as Leonardo, that is dealing with military defense and aerospace security inside Italian universities. Australian Foreign Minister Penny Wong has said that Canberra would consider recognition of a Palestine state. Wong's statement comes as a major shift in the policy as the international community has been calling for a two-state solution to end the Israel-Palestine conflict. In a speech at the Australian National University, Wong backed the comments by British Foreign Minister David Cameron, who has talked about recognizing a Palestinian state. Countries in the West have been demanding a two-state solution after the 7-month-long Israel-Hamas war. The two-state solution has long been the basis for international peace efforts to resolve the Israel-Palestine conflict, but the process has been stalled for a decade now. In the Indian state of Chhattisgarh, at least 12 people have been killed and several others have been injured after a bus carrying the employees of a distillery fell into a ditch in Durg district. The bus carrying around 40 people overturned and fell about 50 feet into a ditch. Prime Minister Narendra Modi expressed condolences over the accident and wished a speedy recovery to the injured passengers. Chhattisgarh Chief Minister Vishnu Desai also said that adequate arrangements have been made for the treatment of those injured in the mishap and wished them a speedy recovery. A fire broke out in a residential building in Hong Kong's Kowloon district, killing 5 people and injuring 19 others. Firefighters and traffic police rushed to the scene of the incident to douse the fire and control the traffic situation. The fire was doused by 8:54 a.m. local time. According to the hospital authorities, at least 6 out of the 19 injured are in serious condition and 1 in critical condition. Steel plant workers marched into Santiago to protest against the suspension of steel production at their main plant. The protesting workers shouted slogans, held banners with the faces of Chilean President Gabriel Boric, Finance Minister Mario Marcel, and Economy Minister Nicolas Grau. Now, the protesters demanded the government to take action to prevent the permanent closure of the steel plant. The Huachi steel plant is one of Chile's largest steel producers. Announced in March that it was suspending steel production as it could no longer compete with imports from China. The doctors in Bolivia have gone on a national strike to protest a retirement bill which they claim will force them to retire when they turn 65 years old. The 72-hour-long national strike began with a march that was also joined by teachers against quote-unquote forced retirement law, which the government wants to get passed in the Congress. In Bolivia, the voluntary retirement age is set at 58 years old for men and 55 years old for women. Hundreds of union workers have hit the streets in Bogota to support the reform bills planned by Colombian President Gustavo Petro. Workers and supporters of the reforms also rallied when the lawmakers brought down the health reform bill last week. The critics of the bill say that eliminating private hospitals wouldn't solve the financial issues and would leave patients vulnerable. President Petro's package includes reforms to the pension, work and education systems and has already passed a tax reform. Petro has also called for supporters to rally in favor of the reforms and pressure Congress. In response to rising cybercrimes in India, the Indian government and banks have stepped up their efforts to warn citizens about online scams. Indians have been receiving an increased number of warning messages in the form of SMS alerts. The government-issued alerts are aimed at educating the public about the dangers of fraudulent ads. Understand that bad actors have been sending out spam messages to the public related to the stock market and trading. According to the Indian government, these are the 2 types of scams that are often used to spread malware and commit financial theft. Moreover, the government has asked the public to report such incidents through the Chuck Schumer complaint service or by calling the toll-free number that is 1930. The Italian government is considering tougher penalties for AI-related crimes. In other words, Italy may soon levy tougher penalties for crimes that are conducted with the help of AI technology. This includes market rigging and money laundering. According to a Reuters report, the Italian government is working on a draft bill. The 25-article draft bill lays down guidelines on the research, experimentation, development, adoption and application of AI technology in the country. The government is also planning to fix a fine for copyright violations through AI. According to reports, people who use AI to create harmful deepfakes could face up to 3 years of jail term. Italy's cabinet is expected to give an initial green light to the bill by the end of April. Australian researchers are using an underwater drone called Hydrus to survey the Great Barrier Reef. The AI-enabled underwater drone is allowing Australian researchers to conduct more accurate and regular surveys of the impacts of climate change on the reef. The drone is fully autonomous, which means it requires no internet or GPS to navigate the seas. Hydrus has a range of 9 kilometers and can go as deep as 3,000 meters for up to 3 hours. It is equipped with a camera and can capture 4K videos while underwater. The drone uses photogrammetry to create 3D digital models of an area or structure. TSMC, a major chip maker for companies like Apple, said its March revenue came in at $6.1 billion, up 34.3% year-on-year. That marks the fastest pace of growth since November of 2022. The company is currently riding the AI boom. Semiconductors such as those designed by NVIDIA have been underpinning the development of AI applications. This follows a strong first quarter, and analysts expect continued growth throughout 2024. A Reuters report suggests a spot Bitcoin exchange-traded funds could be launched in Hong Kong this month, with the first approvals likely to be announced next week. That timeline would make Hong Kong Asia's first city to offer the popular ETFs, which is much faster than industry's expectations of launches sometime this year. Regulators have sped up the approval process, according to the report. Ratings agency Fitch revised its outlook on China's sovereign credit rating to negative, citing risks to public finances as the economy faced increasing uncertainty in its shift to new growth models. Now, the Fitch forecasts the general government deficit would rise to 7.1% of the gross domestic product in 2024 from 5.8% in 2023. China's factory output and retail sales topped forecasts in January-February, joining better-than-expected exports from consumer inflation indicators.